Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the NSA Ad Hoc meeting for August 7th, 2023. It is 6:07 p.m.
Sometimes there might be an ad that's going to come up.
Thank you all for joining and being on time. Sorry that we got started a little bit late. I was running through some technical difficulties. I am going to share the screen for our agenda today to sort of ground us in where we're going to go. As you can see, and I apologize for not being able to send this out earlier, we have a few things. First, we of course are going to get started and maybe have a check-in about and our check-in and our check-in question is going to be a one word about how you feel about OPD's capacity to complete task 5. Thank you, chairs. Wonderful suggestion. Then we're going to go over the survey results as well as the topics presented and what topics were chosen to start this. And then we're going to have a discussion about our first topic, which we have chosen. And then we're going to ask the committee for a little bit of input on some of the topics that come from our April 4th memo for the NSA. We started way back when, maybe back in, it was maybe May for some of these meetings. And one of the things that we had sort of had a discussion about were some of the agreements that we would follow as going through these meetings. Sorry, just checking one thing. I have those agreements to sort of remind us about those agreements right here on the page. Thank you, Ms. Nikki Ditton, for writing these up for us. They are agreements to talk for this ad hoc, be true to who you are, well, I won't read through them. They're on the page. Hopefully just remind each one of us about them. And I will bring them up each time that we start this ad hoc so that we remember these things as we have these conversations. I'm hoping, though, that as you are reading, that perhaps we can start thinking about the question that Chair had and suggested for us.
I can
That
start.
would be great.
My word is optimistic.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, that's one word about OPD's capacity to complete or to be in compliance with task 5. I'm just going to run down the list. I will go last. Jose, you're muted, by the way. You're still muted.
Much the same. Hopeful.
Thank you. I have Lieutenant Hubbard next on my list. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I will admit that Dr. Malele stole my word, but I'm also going to say optimistic.
Thank you.
And welcome back, right? You've been on some kind of vacation, maybe? Hopefully it was a vacation.
Brief vacation. I was attending training on the East Coast, which was very valuable. So thank you for asking.
Welcome back, and again, thank you for being here. Keep moving us along. Deacon Lyles.
Yeah, I'm going to say skeptical.
Thank you. Judge Harvin Forte.
Optimistic.
And I think my word will be hopeful as well. Thank you all. Why don't we, oh, yes, I'm gonna I'm not going to ask commission counsel to weigh in, but thank you for being here. sir. Don't think I forgot about you. I just, thank you. Why don't we turn then to, actually, can I ask someone to help me take notes? Are you commission counsel? Are you doing that for us, or Chair Malele?
I can help with that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's turn then and move us right along to the committee information sharing. Now, part of this plan, this ad hoc met approximately 2 weeks ago. Last week, Deacon Lyles and I met to discuss some of the survey results that had come from everyone filling out the survey. Thank you all for doing that. I looked at the survey again, and at the time that Deacon Lyles and I were going over it, there were 7 responses. Chair, thank you for also putting in your suggestions as to the first priority or topic of choice and the second priority or topic of choice. As a reminder, these were the 5 different areas that we had discussed, that we have laid out, that were suggested, and each person was to pick one of these as their primary focus of what they wanted to work on in the coming weeks, and then their secondary focus of what they wanted to work on for the coming weeks. I'm going to take a moment so that everyone has an opportunity to read and review. I know you all filled it out, and I appreciate it very much, but just putting it up there again so that we all have it.
You said it was 7 participants?
It was
Or respondents?
7 respondents when Chief Lyles and I had spoken, and then it was 8 when I just checked it today. Now, at the time that Chief Lyles and I had talked, as you can see, there are 2 now primary focuses for what people want their first priority to be. The first is changing the department from the bottom up, increasing buy-in of newer officers. That was the one that had the majority of votes when Deacon Lyles and I spoke last Monday. The second one that is now there is also ethical leadership and management. At the time, there wasn't a tie, but that kind of segues very well into the choices that the 3 topics that we chose. You'll see that the second priority or topic of choice at the time was reinforcing accountability. That remains. In fact, I think that may have increased in the number of respondents who chose wanting to reinforce accountability in the department. These are the survey results. Any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I have an opinion about a couple of things. This changing, for example, changing the department from the bottom up, increasing buy-in of newer officers. I don't know if everyone here on this panel understands that when you join a police agency, Oakland Police Department, you're on probation. I think it's, Lieutenant Hubbard, is it 18 months or 1 year?
Thank you for the question. It's 1 year from when they graduate the academy.
Okay. So that alone makes every recruit buy into everything. So we spend our energy, in something that's already fait accompli. Anything you train a newer officer on and say, this is what we're going to rate you on, and this is the way we want you to perform, either through the academy, through the FTO program, or during that 1 year period. Everyone, no one objects to anything because they're on probation. They can be terminated at will. So the psychology of spending our time saying we have to change the department from the bottom up. Every time a new guy joins the department, he'll do anything you tell him. That's not what a challenge is. New officers, not obeying, the Constitution or the policies of the department or the rules of the state of California. That's not the problem. Because they know that, hey, if you have the wrong attitude, you could be terminated.
I appreciate.
So do you guys grasp what I'm saying? Because I know the officers understand this.
I absolutely do. And I think that goes towards not just that goes towards the topics that we've chosen. The topics are not just about focusing on the newer officers, but making sure that one, the topic that we chose last week, Reggie, about acknowledging bad past and bad practices, goes towards all members of the department up and down the leadership line. Talks about sort of not just necessarily having the newer officers, but also every officer that trains those officers, acknowledging and accepting those bad past and bad practices to acknowledge them. We also have so I don't think it's just working on the young ones, I suppose is what you're getting at.
I wanted to make that point because I having that there is almost it's just unnecessary.
Thank you. Any other thoughts about these survey results?
Yeah, the comments by Reggie makes me think that how is it that we focused on instilling leadership at the low to mid level as opposed to the higher level where the culture really resides and is reinforced? How is it we focused on just low and mid level? That's one. And two, it makes me also think that maybe we should have taken a harder look at what are the standards by which the new officers will be judged by their FTOs. So those are two things that Reggie's comments brought to my mind.
What I'm trying to say is not the newer officers, is the officers between 4 to 11 years. That's where the culture resides. And again, who are the FTOs? And who is driving the culture or the attitude of the Oakland Police Department? It really locuses in, FTOs, special assignments like various task forces, street squads, detective divisions. That's where the culture resides. And so if you changing a newer officer, that's anybody could do that. They'll do anything you want them to do, just as long as they pass probation. But what you got to do is make sure that the FTOs are not the people who get the most complaints. FTOs are people who believe in diversity, believe in constitutional policing, all the kind of things. I don't know, Lieutenant Hubbard, you said you was on the East Coast going to school. Was you at the FBI Academy?
No, sir. It was the PERF, Police Executive Research Forum.
Right. Okay. So at those locations, FBI Academy, PERF, that's where the executives get the best cultural change and dynamics and what is new and innovative in law enforcement and what's new and innovative in management and how do you communicate, how do you write best and all that. So it's the people who are not allowed to go to PERF who don't go to the FBI Academy, who it's that 4 to 11 year period. That's where the culture resides. Well, I'll just say this: the culture that we want changed resides.
So Reggie, I recognize what you're saying is at that 4 to 11 level, those officers. Would you agree that those are generally officers who are managed by sergeants or at the sergeant level?
There are probably officers that are not at the sergeant's level, but would want to be sergeants. And oftentimes they're the ones who didn't make the sergeant grade. And for various reasons. And not that they're not smart enough or whatever, but maybe there's something in their background or something in that the management team said, no, we're not going to choose you right now or whatever. So that is where and I'm using this word respectfully, because I know I got an OPD officer here, a deviant attitude resides. And all departments have them. All departments have it. That's the first thing we got to recognize. And they have to be managed.
Who are they managed by?
Generally, it should be managed by sergeants and lieutenants. You know, if you got strong sergeants, strong lieutenants, they can, for example, you got an officer that for some reason in a year's time, he leads the department in 148 arrests. You know, something's wrong there. You got an officer that's always, in the physical altercation, always coming into the station with his jersey ripped and his shirt ripped and blood on his trousers. You got a problem there. And a sharp sergeant, a sharp lieutenant engages those folk. And that's what you're taught at the various management schools, either post-management school, PERF, FBI Academy. How do you engage them? How do you recognize them? And what do you do about it?
Lieutenant Hubbard, do you send sergeants to those? Does a department, excuse me, not you, send sergeants to those particular trainings, academies, whatever?
And I couldn't agree more with everything that was said. The academy and FTO experience, the culture is perfect because you have new employees who are motivated to serve the community and be happy to have a job. And you're right, after they graduate field training, some negativity starts to creep in to their behavior, and that's what we try to offset. So to answer the question, California Post has a very good training program for supervisors, sergeants.
Yes.
It's called Supervisory Leadership Institute.
Yes.
It's an eight-month program. I went through it about 10 years ago when I was a sergeant, and it's great. Unfortunately, it's sometimes hard to get into. And when the last time I actually put it out for sergeants, I didn't have anyone sign up. So when we talk about culture, it's not just so much a supervisor doing it. I need to go to the sergeant and say, I really would like you to go through this. And that starts with the commanders. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of leadership training for officers. And that's where I'm really disappointed with Post, because I think they can develop a program, for the officer level. They get the basic stuff in the academy, but nothing really robust. But that does not mean that we could not develop one here at the Oakland Police Department.
Lieutenant Hubbard, what was the name of that again? Supervisory what?
Supervisory Leadership Institute, SLI.
Thank you.
And that's over 20 something years old. I even went to it, and it's wonderful.
It's gotten better. Yeah, it is very old. Yes.
I didn't mean old, like not good. It's just that they knew that that sergeants and supervisor level need that, because if you don't have people that sharp to recognize what's happening with your rank and file, you get into problems. And so that's where the rubber meets the road. at the sergeant's level, and then lieutenants who supervise sergeants.
So Jose, to answer your question, this is why we put down mid-level.
Yeah, no, I got that. Thank you. That's why we got Reggie here. One
So-
quick question about
Go ahead.
the to Lieutenant Hubbard around the, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I'd be interested in knowing, and we don't have to get into it now, what would be you consider robust training for officers? And I wonder if that would should not include being ready, willing, and able to report misconduct of their peers.
So I am going to actually put a pin on that,
Okay,
because since this is going to be one of our 3 topics, that is something that we are going to have a dedicated discussion to. I want to sort of try to respect our time. I hope that Lieutenant Hubbard, you'll take a note of that question and perhaps follow up by email or come to that next meeting, which I think is probably going to be in the next week or the week after that, and give us that answer or any other related answer that you might be. I appreciate the discussion, but I want to keep track of time and want to focus on our agenda so that we sort of build in the use the time that we have in what's the word I'm looking for? As much of a focused way as possible. Sorry, Jose.
I got it. That's fine.
Much appreciated. So as it may be a little small, let me see if I can zoom in here. I am going to struggle a little bit. I apologize. But the 3 topics that we've decided upon are acknowledging bad past and bad past practices, which is about sort of acknowledging the struggles that the department has had in the past, having trainings on those, and sort of recognizing what those things are, essentially, so that people know what they are and don't make those mistakes again. Number 2 is taking a look at the discipline matrix and making modifications, closing loopholes. There was some discussion about that. And then number 3, which is the topic that we were just talking about, ethical leadership and management for low to mid-level managers. Those are the 3 that we'd like to try to focus on, create some recommendations around, perhaps have a panel discussion with experts, subject matter experts, and try to bring forth this to the NSA Case Management Conference as our community-driven topics and recommendations for the department to address specifically what the judge asked for, which is how do we make that culture change? So hopefully with that, I can make this screen work out well. Yes. And then move on to our next part, which is talking about that first topic, and exactly what it is, and answering these 3 questions that we have. So first, I'm going to ask the question, or read these questions, and then second, I'm going to ask Deacon Lyles to sort of to tell us a little bit about your vision of this, because this was one that you and I had discussed, and I want you to tell the ad hoc what you told me, to sort of why this is so important. So it's, how does this topic change culture? How or what might the department do to implement this topic? And what sources or experts do we need to bring to the table to present? So that, number 1, the recommendations have the validity of sort of the best knowledge in a way to change the department, as well as with clear, solid, evidence-based, if there are, or if not, that's okay too, recommendations for the department that we can let the judge know this is how we propose, the community proposes making that culture change. Sound good?
Yep.
Yes.
Deacon Lyles, take it away.
Well, I think it's the most important item on here, because you cannot make a change until you recognize that there's something that needs to be changed. Now, people are vested in their organization, and they defend it, and they should defend it. They work there. And if you say something about the organization, you're saying something about them personally. So it's only human for folks to be, defensive about it. But the facts are, and the facts are that Oakland Police Department has had a horrible history. And I'm not equivocating on the word, horrible. And it's horrible because, and been proven by Jennifer Eberhardt's study, the Writers Come at It Out at Night book, that's a historical reflection on Oakland Police Department, and the various most recent ugly incidences that don't happen at every department in the Bay Area, happen at Oakland Police Department. So if you don't recognize it, if you can't look at yourself in the mirror and said, I am the one standing in need of change, there will be no change. You're just in denial. And what you're seeing is what you're believing, but what you're believing is adverse and wrong. So I'm saying that we have the facts, we've done the studies been done by experts, quality people. I don't think you get anybody of a higher quality than Jennifer Eberhardt in the MacArthur study. That study nothing has changed there. The consent decree, the Jennifer Eberhardt study mirrors the consent decree. If you read the 58 pages that she had written, you'll see that that's it. There was a woman on with us last time we discussed this. I believe her name was Asanta, and I may not be saying her name.
Asala Olaba.
Yes, and I apologize for that. But I thought what she said was so on point. She said, we're not here to modify law enforcement in America. We're here to change the Oakland Police Department. That's what we're here to change. Now, if we hear folks say, not all the police officers are bad, then they don't get it. If they say, well, you can't denigrate every officer. No, I'm not. We're not doing that. And I don't think every officer has taken part in some of the nefarious behaviors that brought us here today. But it's a good percentage of them. And the system is broken down because sergeants didn't recognize it, that they had a problem early and didn't do anything about it. Chiefs of police didn't hold them accountable, and because of the culture, according to Judge Orrick, he's of the opinion in writing that Oakland's incapable of disciplining itself. I've never heard that in my 30 plus years around law enforcement. We pride ourselves for being professional because we can discipline ourselves. That's what the demarcation of being a professional is. We have standards. We hold our members to that standards. He's saying Oakland can't do that. So if this is hard to hear, it should be hard to hear. But we can't walk away from the fact that this is where we are with the Oakland Police Department. So what we need to do is have the department go through a process of looking at that. What are some of the suggestions you can do? You can bring in, well, we've already had the experts, Jennifer Eberhardt and all of them. You could do that, go down that route again. I don't have any problem with that. I think it ought to be departmental meetings. I think that the chief ought to have, if I was the chief, I would have departmental meetings with my lieutenants and sergeants and say, this is what the problem is. And you have to buy into it, or you are not going to be one of my favorite people. And I couldn't say that because somebody would sue me, I'm sure. But that would be the attitude. That would be the feeling I would want to get out. That, look, if you want to do well in this organization, you have to recognize that we've had some problems, serious problems. Every promotional exam, every lateral movement would be, would have a hurdle of some test that you would have to go through and get through. And on that testing in writing, you would have questions around these issues. Constitutional policing. What does it mean? What does it mean to you? It would be on every, oral interview for the finalists. What does it mean to you? What would you do if you saw officers doing this?
So I
And if
want to,
you,
can I just sort of
good.
toe in a little bit? When you say asking people about it, are you asking people hypotheticals about it, or are you asking to quiz them on what happened in those prior occasions?
No, I would have a series of questions. Can I give you an example? I can probably, in the Berkeley Police Department, we were horrible in our crowd management. And some of our officers did some things that caused half the city to burn down. And because of that, going forward on every sergeant's exam, there was questions about if you saw a group of people doing this, behaving in a certain way, how would you act? Our officers just ran in with sticks up, hitting people. You know, well, that's what we did. And it was horrible. And all it did was escalate. So there was another way of doing it and another way of responding to it. So that's the kind of questions that I saw on every lateral movement that before I was a sergeant, I was a detective. And after a detective, I became a sergeant. After sergeant, on the lieutenant's exam, on the captain's exam, every movement, they had those kind of questions. So you understood crowd management. Why is that important for the city of Berkeley? Well, it used to be the home base for civil movements and civil actions at the University of California in Berkeley. How do we work well? We didn't want to work well with UCPD. We had questions on why are we doing that? You have to change that behavior. So once we identify and we have these things that we think Oakland doesn't do well, that has to be on its examinations. Again, lateral movement for every officer and promotional exams. And so they understand if I'm going to move up the chain of command, and most people who move up the chain of command want to, no one does it because they don't want to do it. They want the money, they want to be in charge. They think they know what the best way of doing it, and they do. And they have the courage and the character to do it. So you have to say, this is wrong, this is right, this is how we want you to go. Then you got to have a series of departmental meetings with everybody. You know, when they were having problems in the United States military, they had I think it was the Navy. The Navy stood down one day, and everybody had to go through a training on the problems they were having. And I think it was around the Navy and its abuse of women in the Navy. So for one day, all the Navy in the United States had to stand down and go through this training. That doesn't happen every 10 years or every 20 years. But the demarcation of it made it clear that our behavior, I think it was called tailhook scandal, that this no longer will be tolerated in this United States Navy. So then, of course, in the Naval Academy, classes about this thing, it became a topic. And so people move away. You don't hear about that any longer. You don't hear about sexual assaults on women in the Navy any longer. You don't hear it at all. So these are the things you got to do. They got to be out of the normal. They got to be dramatic. They got to be big enough that everybody understand this is the big deal. Now, and you got to ignore the naysayers. And the naysayers will be 60-40. You're going to have people going, why are we doing this? 60%, the majority is going to say, this is a waste of time, it's a waste of money, blah, 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 blah. That's why they need to change. So
Thank
that's
you,
the
Deacon
top end and
Miles.
that's the middle. I'll quickly go to the bottom end. Then every sergeant, if they're not going to the SLI, doesn't mean that.
What does SLI mean?
Sergeant Leadership Institute.
Okay.
And here's the thing about SLI. It's almost
That's getting us a little far afield, don't you think?
no, it's not, because I'm
Back to
gonna show you why. I'm gonna get to my point. SLI is for the shining stars, and you got to have some political connections and blah 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 and connected blah blah to get tapped on the head. You're going to SLI. You go to SLI, folks think you're probably going to be the next lieutenant. But what we want to do in Oakland is have every supervisor have a mini SLI right here in Oakland. And we can have a 1-day training, 2-day training, where you bring in people from the community to do the training on 1 day, and then people from the department doing the training. One of the problems I found in Oakland is that they don't want anybody training them except for their own. So they don't learn how communities and neighborhoods change and evolve. You cannot learn how to do policing by esoteric training. You got to hear from, well, who lives next door to MS-13? Who lives next door to Crips and Bloods? Who know about them? That's where you get the vital information to learn how to police and learn how to, keep the peace. So I don't have all the answers, but this is the track that you need to go on. Now, if you can't do it, if you don't think this is valuable, then what you're saying without saying it
So just
out loud is
can we
that
just clarify what you mean by this? Do you mean the SLI or the acknowledging best practice, the topic?
all of the things that I've been talking about for the last 5 minutes.
You've been talking about a lot of things, so I just want to be clear. The topic,
Yeah, but
right? The topic.
don't beat me up, man.
I-
I'm
Say-
trying to do the best I
Trust-
can.
Trust me,
And,
this is me beating you up. You would
Okay,
know
I'm
it if I
trying to do the
was.
best I can. And what I'm saying, if you need to hold on to it and take it in as real and necessary. If you find yourself saying, well, what Reggie Lyles is saying is just a lot of talk, blah, 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 blah. It's not, we don't have time for that. We can't afford it, blah, blah. What you're subtly saying is status quo is okay. And it's not okay. It may be okay for everybody here, but it's not okay for people out that are living in Oakland. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Deacon Lyles. So on that particular note, I want to, of course, engage the idea to take time, and because we have made space for it. And I invite any of the current ad hoc members or anybody who's here to really start answering some of the questions that we have posed, and I'll put them up again. Sorry, I need to share screen. Again, it's how does this particular topic change culture? Deacon Lyles has given us some examples about why, what, really the how, but how does this particular topic change culture? How or why, what might the department do to implement this topic? And what sources or experts do we need to bring to the table to present? I think a key part, and I hope that we can have some discussion about question 1, so that we can really describe and tell the judge, this is why we want to do this, and this is why we think it will change the culture.
What I've told you about was transformational. I'll stop there.
It certainly will be. How does that particular idea, that acknowledging bad past or bad practices, how does that change a department's culture?
I'll take a crack at that. I had a conversation with a an officer that I like a lot. And I told him, I'm going to buy you, I told him the other day, I bought you riders. Let's discuss this together. And he's a good guy. He said, no, I don't want to do that. But yet he was talking a lot about how he doesn't understand, and this is an officer of color. I don't understand why, I go down the street and I get flipped off, and he's a fairly young guy. So those two attitudes of his, I was disappointed. And the point is that it's a real contradiction. He doesn't understand why the community feels as they do toward him, and he had very little to do with it. The bad past, the bad praxis, because he wasn't around here that long. But yet he won't take a deep dive into looking at just what Reggie was talking about. Looking in the mirror. So I was just disappointed. So it's a long way of saying that I think that we make the point to the judge that not only do the lower and mid level and officers need to look in the mirror in a real structured way, but that look in the mirror should be facilitated by and that there should be a number of looks, and one of those looks should definitely be a look that's structured by the community. In other words, there should be a definite component of this look in the mirror that's put together by the community, by people that are really at the grassroots level, that really are affected on a daily basis by violence and poverty, and also that have a background in and know about why they would flip this officer off. That, I think, is just an invaluable way of not just giving the officers and the sergeants or prospective sergeants a real insight into what's the essence of the feelings of many people in Oakland, but also I think it would have an impact on the culture in general if in fact you do have this look in the mirror that's brought to you by folks on the street. I think that's a real it would be a real valuable insight, actually invaluable insight into cultural change. I'll leave it at that.
Lieutenant Hubbard, I saw your hand, but just let me ask Jose a question to tease this out. Jose, it sounds like you are drawing a direct line from an officer learning about, reading about a community's previous trauma at the hands of a police department directly to their ability to empathize and to understand and really sort of understand where a community is coming from. And that you feel like is going to cause a change in some way in the way an officer may police, interact with the community, or sort of understand where a community member is coming from, get closer to that community. Is that kind of what you're getting at, or is there something more?
I know that, well, there is something more, but in essence, that is it. There's
What is
something
that?
more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something more would be taking the next step to not just change their attitude in terms of how they view the community and how they interact with the community, but take the next step, which is substantial, and that is actively engage in a healing process, because now they understand the trauma of the past. Now they understand at a much deeper level why they get flipped off just doing their job. And I think that's really a transformation of an officer, where they not only have the understanding, but they actively use that as a springboard for engaging in a healing process.
Thank you. Lieutenant Hubbard.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner. for all your words. And I agree with you 100%. So just two things. Our academy is 26 weeks long and it's commissioned by post. So there's not a lot of wiggle room on what we can offer in the academy. However, I do a transition course immediately after they graduate, and it gives me free reign to offer whatever training that I could not do in the academy. The one thing we did in our last academy graduation class, the one who's in field training right now, is I invited Jim Channing, who I love and respect dearly, and also Allie Winston, who is the co-author of Writers Come Out at Night, and they spoke to the new academy. Darwin was also invited, but he was ill and couldn't make it. But I agree with you 100%, is we cannot learn unless we know our history. And until the 191st Academy, we never had a history of OPD course. And that's what I'm trying to develop, is I want these new officers to understand where we came from, to see all of our past sins, but also our successes too, so they can learn from that. And I'm not the chief of police, but I would like to require everyone in the Oakland Police Department to read The Writers Come Out at Night. I read it twice. I enjoyed it. I lived through all of that because I've been here for 25 years. So I was here slightly before the NSA and all the way through it. And yes, it was painful to read, but very important also. So I just want to let you all know that I'm very optimistic with this. I'm going to continue to develop that curriculum so we can get more. Also with that, I want to invite more community members to speak, and I'll be happy to make that a one-day event for these new officers.
What, if anything, do you think is the prospect of it expanding beyond the new officers to department-wide, of course, with various rollouts, et cetera?
Again, very optimistic on that. I know it's more challenging, especially for the guest speakers, to come into the more disgruntled officers. It's going to be tough, but that's something I absolutely would love to have. I will say this, if you all know, working with Dr. Eberhard in Stanford, we created this thing called Project Reset. I'll send it to all of you in writing just so you can see, so I won't talk about it that much, but it's a one-day course. And the whole thing is about changing the culture of OPD. And one of the modules within that course is the history of OPD, but it's not big enough. So what I like to do is expand on that, because what I found was, and I found this quite surprising as I've been teaching that class, is a lot of the new officers, and I wouldn't say even mid-level officers, they surprised me by what they said is they want more community interaction. They want to know about the history of OPD, but somehow they've been blocked along the way. So I would like to expand on that. So absolutely, certainly that we can talk about is developing a curriculum where community members, any of one of you, can come in and speak to officers of all ranks.
And do you think the prospect of not just training on the NSA, but also maybe some highlights, lowlights, et cetera, is possible, reasonable, doable?
Absolutely. And anecdotes are best. I mean, I want the community members who had positive and negative interactions with the police to come in. And I think that's important for everyone to hear.
Not just building sort of what the topics are, but also actual quotes or people coming in and being able to say and convey those pieces so that people really understand some of the trauma that has been inflicted upon them.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank you. That's definitely something to start following up on. I hope you'll be able to, we're very fortunate to have you here with us today. I hope you'll be able to share some of that curriculum, some topics, and we can, the ad hoc can work on sort of how we might expand that, how we might make it more palatable for, not palatable, but easier to present for department-wide, not just the academy officers and all the various iterations. I appreciate it. Jose?
Yeah, just real quickly, one of the things you said really interests me, and that is that you said that many of the officers want to interact with the community. That gives me a lot of hope, because there's a lot of room for that to happen. And so I'm really gratified to hear that. So just that perked up my ears. Thank you.
I will share the screen again to bring us back to our 3 questions. And we are, how does this topic change culture? How or what might the department do to implement this topic? And what sources or experts do we need to bring to the table to present? As you can see, our notes are expanding and sort of as we gather this information. Any additional input, thoughts, any one of these 3 that we haven't had a chance to talk about or touched upon?
Yeah, I would suggest that in doing this, it can't be done piecemeal. It can't just be done by personnel and training. It has to be done by everybody in the department, and everyone representative in the department has to participate. And it starts with the chief of police, of course, as it should, of everything about a department in changing their course or trying to change their character. So, you know, step 1 would be the chief making sure all of his deputy DCs understand what we're trying to, what our goal is, and how, not necessarily how we plan to get there, because I'm sure they have some ideas too, but this is the goal. This is how this is the touchdown. We want to get to a point, number 1, where we recognize what we've done in the last 23 years was horrible, and that we can do better. And I want to quickly say, it's never 100% of any department. That's always the defense that comes out. Not every officer. It's generally about 10%, maybe 10 to 15%. But that can drive, that 15% of nefarious behavior can drive and destroy a reputation of a department. So you have to say, you have to let them know, look, we're not saying everybody. So if you're not, if you don't fit this characterization that we're going to talk about, then don't take it on as an insult to you. You have no reason to be insulted. No reason at all. I was a police officer when Rodney King got beat up. At no way did I think I was one of those guys in LAPD. And I was running the drug task force in Oakland, Berkeley area. No way did I inherit what they did or think that I am them. So that has to be taught and trained also. This collectivism that is a union idea, and it's a good idea in America, but this collectivism groupthink is just needs to change in law enforcement. You know, if a person does something or 2 people do something, they got to face the music. Everybody else is not indicted. So we don't go out and say, well, we're all not like that. No, just those guys are like that. Just those guys did it.
When you mentioned a little bit earlier that everyone should go through this, not just personnel and training, what did you mean by this?
When I'm talking about what I'm saying is this collective training, this collective standing down, where we stop and recognize that what we have done in the last 23 years is horrible. But we're not all horrible. And that we do great work. And we got phenomenal officers here working for us. But what we have done under the umbrella of the Oakland Police Department, it's not everybody, but the few who have done it, have done some horrible stuff. And we don't have to be that way. They got agencies that don't have problems at all. And those agencies are the ones that have a strong sergeant rank, and they're not trying to be the officer's friend or commuting buddy, but they're really supervising the rank and file.
You really want to talk about that 3rd topic? I know.
Yeah, I do.
We'll get there. We'll get there. All right. Let's
What
see.
about the last question? I don't have any notes on that.
I do recall Deacon Lyles suggesting that, again, we bring Jennifer Eberhardt to present again, the authors of the MacArthur study. I don't know if those are two separate things. I did hear,
I mentioned Keith Ellison.
yeah,
And some people said, well, oh, that's too much money. Well, we ought to ask. We ought to ask, and we
you got a
and we
name
have
for Keith
Zoom.
Ellison.
Well, you know, until I hear no, it ain't no. It's a possibility. And so, you know, we can use Zoom or something. You know, we gotta, you know, this is a major deal. So we bring in major people because this is a major deal.
I also heard Lieutenant Hubbard mention Jim Channon, Ellie Winston, Darwin Von Graham. I know that there's when I used to do reentry, I recall there were the 3 R's of rehabilitation. I don't remember exactly what they are. Perhaps you might: accepting responsibility, maybe rehabilitation, and a third R. That comes from some sort of science-backed study about how someone might actually engage in change in their mindset. Do you remember what those 3 R's are? Okay, I'll look it up. I will look into sort of some rehabilitation-backed science, science about rehabilitation. It's not the perfect analogy, but it's, I think, what we're getting at here. The beginning of it being acknowledging responsibility for prior acts or past actions, and look into that. Make a note for myself here.
I'd like you to put down that we approach this thing with empathy, that we're not approaching this training to beat up the officer, but we approach them with we want to change. We know you.
And I think that makes sense. I think that part of this sounds a lot like well, I have bigger ideas about it, but maybe not necessarily for this. I also want to take sort of any other thoughts about what sources or experts should we bring to the table to present? Lieutenant Hubbard, thank you.
Yeah, one more piece of history. About 5 years ago, the Oakland Police Foundation partnered with Goldman School of Public Policy for Berkeley, and they put on a leadership course that spanned for a few months for officers only. It was very successful, excellent training. I would like to explore the opportunity to bring that back. It is very expensive, so we do have to have a conversation about funding. But I think the point of it is, it wasn't developed by police officers. It was scholars, educators who put it together. And all but one of the 10 officers who attended still work for us and just doing a phenomenal job in their current assignment. Considered leaders, excellent. So just an idea to bring that back.
I appreciate that. That actually brings up something that we haven't quite maybe talked about, but a framework for leadership training that might sort of talk about how we get at this particular issue, getting at this sort of being able to train managers, sergeants, lieutenants to talk about this and to remind people and to reinforce the trainings or the teachings that come from these trainings. Thank you.
Jesse, how about recognition, respect, and reconciliation?
Recognition, respect, and not quite. I'm talking about it from a criminal legal perspective. That's what I'm looking at. I'll find it, I promise. I've had a few suggestions, haven't quite gotten there yet. All right. Let me see. Could we have perhaps a little bit more discussion about, Reggie, you brought up this idea of having this particular topic at departmental meetings. What do we envision that being? What does that look like? At what level? I can think of lots of departmental meetings. I can think of academy trainings. I can think of lineups. I can think of management meetings, sergeants meetings, what have you. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, how something of this size is done has to be well thought out, because the streets have to be policed, and you gotta have that kind of coverage, and it's expensive, because you're taking a group of people off the street. I would maybe go through it, like take a month to do it, and take sections of the department at a time, and go through it like that. Lieutenant Hubbard probably knows better how the department works, but patrol is probably going to be the most challenging group that has to face this, because they got to patrol the streets. So you're gonna have to call in mutual aid, etc. To cover the streets while this is done. And how many hours in a session do you want it done? Hopefully, ideally, at least 8 hours, but they may not be able to afford that. Maybe you can only do 4 or 3 hours. But these are the challenges that and you need a practical tactician like Lieutenant Hubbard, who understands the dynamic of the department and where the people are located, and how the training has to be done. But number one, it has to be mandatory, and no calling in sick. Everybody has to go through the training one way or the other, and it's recorded and put in their files.
So that's the logistical side. I'm wondering exactly what these meetings are. These meetings, the trainings that you're thinking of, is that?
Yeah, I'm what I'm thinking of is that these meetings, or the meeting, if it's a smaller department, is departmental wide, and it's a demarcation of, we recognize we were wrong. We're doing this at this date and this time because of our past behavior. What was that past behavior? What did we do wrong? How did we make mistakes? What type of characterization got us in this? What kind of characterization do we want? What kind of ethical behavior do we want? And what kind of ethical attitude do we want? And I would say in the beginning, take good notes, guys, because you're going to see this again on all your promotional exams and all your lateral transfers and everything. We're going to do this over and over and over. And it may take 5 years before the culture seeps down into the DNA of the department.
Thank you. Any last thoughts?
There's one other thing. We got a new chief coming. We're looking for a new chief. So we ought to be trying to get this to whoever's doing the curing, I can't say the word, questioning about this new chief, a new suspect. What are their ideas on this? I'd like to hear what the prospect chiefs think about cultural change. How would they do cultural change?
Well, you do have a time to actually set that and what those standards might be, or what those competences might be, at our chief roundtables that are occurring both on Wednesday as well as this weekend, Saturday, to sort of talk about what do you want that next chief to be, and perhaps this might be one of them.
Yes.
Make sure you show up.
Thank you for the plug, Jesse. Yeah, we have 3 more forums. We also have a virtual one on the 9th that you can Zoom into.
Did you say the 9th?
The 9th of August.
Okay.
I would share the flyer or something, but I can't get in the chat.
I will, I'll share it to the ad hoc after today, after the meeting. Thank you. Final thoughts before we move on to the next part? I'm very good at awkward silences.
We're at time for that segment anyway.
Okay. Thank you all. That was a very robust discussion and thoughts, lots of very good ideas. The commissioners will take this and start to develop them, and we'll bring them back to you in sort of this iterative process, continuous process to flesh them out into formal recommendations with ideas and bringing them back to you. The last part that we want to take some time with the ad hoc is to talk a little bit about some of the memo points that we had in our April 4th meeting, and to ask the ad hoc for some feedback or input. I think that at this point I will switch with the chair, if that's okay. I'll take notes and perhaps you could guide us in this topic and I'll bring it up on the screen.
We didn't discuss that.
Well, you need to help me out a little bit.
And I might even tag in council on this a little bit, if you don't mind. But basically, in our memo, we had these things we wanted to implement, and we were going to create a plan for doing that. And they were specifically about addressing and preventing some of the issues that led to the lack of communication between the city and the commission during the Clarence Dyer investigation and subsequent report. The first one is about, notifying us if there's the commission, if there is some sort of serious incident. And they might consider even broadening that to include anything that includes the chief, assistant chief, deputy chiefs, and the monitor and or city needs to notify the commission because the commission learned of the investigation with the community from Darwin Bongram rather than from the city or the monitor. Let's see what else. The coordination. So on the contract with Clarence Dyer, it said CIPRA was supposed to be notified and coordinated with. That didn't happen. So making sure that any sort of outside investigation, that there is communication there, and then suggesting that we have some briefings with the monitor, communicate with the commission about, what the status of compliance issues. We find ourselves with very vague information. Like all we have is what everyone else has, which is just the report that comes out and doesn't get into any specifics. Personnel documents. So we had originally had what we thought was a sort of omnibus vote to receive documents. And at one point, city attorney said that worked. At another point, they said it didn't. And so when Connor Kennedy was our counsel, we did the omnibus vote so that we can get any sort of personnel files that's pertinent. But then when this report came up, suddenly that didn't count anymore. And we needed to vote ahead of time on getting files and records for anything. which obviously, if we don't know there is a investigation happening, we're not going to know to request the file at a commission meeting and agendize that. So trying to figure out a way to get all the personnel documents that are related to the commission's chartered, authorities and duties, to, see what kind of routine we can establish with getting that so that we can do those votes on a regular basis. And then yeah, so this last one, I guess, is about just possibly even revisiting the section of the charter, because obviously it makes it hard for the commission to be able to act in real time if they have to be notified and then agendize a vote to get the requested documents. So maybe working with council to create a sort of blanket request versus case by case to be able to access those documents. Council, did you want to add, remove, clarify, correct anything I said?
Madam Chair, you spoke very eloquently about, the reasoning for each of those points, and Commissioner Shea, as chair of the NSA Ad Hoc, wanted to make a point, even though it is going to the commission meeting on Thursday, wanted to make a point to bring it here to the NSA Ad Hoc so that we can get your thoughts and feedback and bring that forward to the Thursday meeting. So if you have any thoughts on this, that would be great. Being mindful at the same time that these solutions were actually put in our NSA memo that was filed in April of 2023 with the court. So this is something at least has been vetted a few times over. But nevertheless, we are really following through with it, following up with it. And so we'd love to get your feedback and move it forward.
When
This
did that
again
become-
is not to stop any of the great conversation that you're having. This is one piece of the many pieces that are necessary as part of the NSA work that the commission does. I'm sorry, Commissioner Shea.
When did I become chair of this ad hoc?
Oh, did I just?
She
Anyways.
slipped that in there, didn't she?
Anyways, so that you all
my bad.
so that you all know, essentially, I think this all comes from the backdrop of what happened over the last 8 months. The fact that there were these investigations that were going on, and you all found out the same time that we did. When I say you all, I mean the community. And what these suggestions and these proposals are to make it so that the commission is notified about this much earlier, so that the community is involved much earlier, and so that we have ways to weigh in on these things or to monitor them so that we are not caught flat-footed, and so that the community is prepared with their response, their oversight for what comes and what have you. And these are the some of the proposed solutions for the communication problem that we experienced over these last 8 months. And perhaps what the thoughts might be would be, what, if anything, might we be missing? Is there a way to make these stronger? Thoughts? Or just, how do you feel about this?
We could just call on people.
I think people are reading. That's what's going on. Reading and absorbing.
Well, as a lifelong educator, I can't help but call on people that I haven't heard from today. So, Judge, Any thoughts? But you'll have to get off of mute first.
You may have noticed that I don't have much of a voice today. So that's why I'm just sitting and listening. That's one of the reasons that I am just sitting and listening. But tell me what am I supposed to be doing now?
Just giving input on these sort of communication enhancements that were proposed in the April 4th memo that we
yes.
are going to put on, that is on the agenda for Thursday.
Okay, and yes, since I was chair of the ad hoc when that memo was prepared and included these, I fully support what you have here. Yeah, Justin, that's when I was chair, and now you have the chair position. But yes, I definitely agree. There were some crucial errors that were made, and lots of oversight. And we have to be in a better position next time around to get the information we need to act swiftly. Okay, is that it? Is that good enough? Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. And just to reinforce the point a little bit, you know, the commissioners, the police commission, one of their main tasks and main goals is oversight and oversight of the NSA tasks. And while we're not being told what's going on, how do you do that oversight? When you learn about it when everyone else does, how do you have enough time to implement the steps that will actually have oversight? That's the idea.
Who is supposed to
And
be
if I
telling?
can, and if I can add, particularly when it comes to the chief, if your chief of police is under investigation for untruthfulness, the commission should be the first one to be notified. So, you're right. I'm sorry.
Who's supposed to do? Who's supposed to be doing the notification? Who is the possessor of the information that should share it with CIPRA?
OPD.
OPD, and also to the extent that the monitor stands in the shoes of OPD
Right.
and IAD, it should have been the monitor as well.
Okay.
The other time too that it should have come up was when the cases were referred out to outside counsel for investigation. The police commission should have been notified as well.
Right.
When the case, and there was a contract, apparently, I don't think we've ever seen the contract, but apparently there was a contractual provision with the Clarence Dyer firm that they were to include CIPRA and coordinate with CIPRA in their investigation. CIPRA had no idea that they were investigating the chief, so they never gave notice to CIPRA. CIPRA would have notified the police commission, so that would have been another safeguard, another another safeguard, safety net. What are those things that in the bowling alleys from the ball?
Guardrails.
Guardrail, another guardrail. Yeah.
Bumpers, possibly.
Also, I think, the city attorney could have notified the commission.
Yeah. Yeah.
The plaintiff's counsel could have notified the commission. Anybody.
Don't you
Anybody
think
who
we ought to
has,
state that?
And
Shouldn't it be stated in any policy?
I'm sorry.
It seems like it should be stated in, I guess these are recommendations, but right? These are ideas. And seems like it should be said that the city manager or the mayor, and we should identify him, must or shall notify in these cases. Does that make sense?
It does. And so when
'Cause
you
we-
say in
'cause-
these instances, are you talking about, you're not talking, I imagine you're talking about OPD, which means that would be in some sort of policy that we either make recommendations about or actually have changed, which is going on right now. That's the M404.1 notifications that we've been going through with the police commission meetings. But it sounds like you're also talking about city attorney, mayor, monitor, plaintiff's counsel, right? And the
And they ought to
question
be
is,
stated. They ought to be,
like explicitly, our recommendation is that everyone agree. When something like this is going on, y'all should tell us.
see, we in the first paragraph, we stating that, the chief, assistant chief, deputy chief, including monitor notice if he is IT.
I'm gonna throw in a time check. This Zoom is needed at 7:30 for another ad hoc. So,
Gotcha.
and we had also promised to ourselves that we would stay within our time slot as well.
So what I would suggest with the time that we have left, that I would thank everyone for their time, that the agenda, which is here and which we have been inputting notes on, and has the links to all of these, including this memo notes, as well as these community agreements, were shared with everyone on the same email chain. Lieutenant Hubbard, I will add you to that email chain. And that if you have more thoughts or more suggestions, please email the ad hoc or email or make some notes or get the ideas to us somehow. We very much want those ideas. We very much want the input. We are better with you all helping us along in this process. I want to, again, thank you all. Our next meeting is going to be next Monday, August 14th. It's going to be 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We will have a very similar agenda where we're going to take on the next topic, and I think I can safely say right now that's going to be talking about the discipline matrix and having a discussion about that. And I can imagine that we're probably going to have the exact same questions to you. How does this topic change culture? How or what should the department do to implement this topic? And what sources or experts do we need to bring to the table to present?
Hey, and it's 7:29.
Yeah, and I'll just name it. Why don't we co-chair? Because I feel like we did divvy up some of the labor for this, and I'm happy to do that. Does that sound good to you? So I'll fix this agenda for next week.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. You are much more organized than I am nowadays, right now. Thank you all.
All right, y'all.
Take care.
Have a good
Bye.
night.
Great
Thank you
meeting.
very much
Good
for this
meeting.
Good night, y'all.